All right. Welcome back to the Liz Wheeler Show. I'm your host, Liz Wheeler. Here's the question for the show today. Are you ready? What crime did former National Security Advisor John Bolton commit? John Bolton's home and his office were raided by Kash Patel's FBI early Friday morning. And the mainstream media, I'm sure you've noticed, is conveniently ignoring the reason why. Why did the FBI raid Bolton's home? Why did they raid his office? Well, they raided his home and his office based on allegations that John Bolton secreted. He funneled highly classified information out of the White House when he was in the White House, allegedly violating serious federal law. That's bad enough, but that's only half the story. What exactly did John Bolton do with that stolen classified information on the outside? Well, today on the Liz Wheeler Show, we are going to walk through a series of photographs that trace the steps of John Bolton overseas near the seat of government of a foreign nation that allegedly traffics in such stolen classified information. Listen, it's an interesting time to live in Washington, D.C. If you live in the swamp today, you have chills creeping up your spine after this weekend. You're constantly looking over your shoulder. You're jumpy. You're nervous. If you weaponized the Department of Justice or the intelligence community, your position of power, and you broke the law using government to target your political enemies, then you have one question ringing in your ears today. Am I next? You're nervous. You're probably nauseous. Am I next? When you go to bed tonight, you wonder, will I be awakened by the FBI bashing down my door? You're probably looking over your shoulder right now, thinking about it. The words nagging you until you're sick. Am I next? Because what President Trump's FBI, under the direction of Kash Patel, has done by raiding the home of John Bolton is the best thing that has come out of the Department of Justice since President Trump was inaugurated in January. Today's episode is sponsored by All Family Pharmacy. Are you tired of doctors telling you no, you can't get prescriptions for affordable off-patent medications? Insurance won't cover what actually works for you. Well, if this is you, you are not alone. Millions of Americans are frustrated with our broken healthcare system. All Family Pharmacy is your alternative. All Family Pharmacy is a patient-first, independent pharmacy. They connect you with licensed U.S. doctors who approve your prescriptions online, fast and legally. So there's no gatekeeping, there's no insurance middleman, there's no red tape. They offer affordable, high-demand medications that are often hard to access, for political reasons. I'm talking ivermectin at All Family Pharmacy, starting at just $2, methbendazole, hydroxychloroquine, antibiotics, NAD. You order online, it takes just minutes. It's so easy. A licensed doctor reviews and then approves your prescription. Medications ship straight to your door, so no clinic visits, no hassle. Everything is secure, HIPAA compliant, and pharmacist reviewed. You choose the medication, not an insurance company or an indoctrinated, corrupt physician. Real healthcare freedom means you decide what's right for your body. All Family Pharmacy has transparent pricing, no surprise bills. They're trusted by thousands of Americans who are taking control of your health. Listen, it's time to put your medical freedom back in your hands. That's why All Family Pharmacy exists. Visit them, allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz. And because you are part of the medical freedom movement, use code Liz10 at checkout for an exclusive discount. It's your health. It should be your choice. No more waiting, no more corruption. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz, code Liz10. Allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz, code Liz10. So here's the video of former National Security Advisor John Bolton's home being raided by FBI agents. This happened in the early hours on Friday. It was first his home was raided, then FBI agents raided his office, although they waited a little bit later on Friday before they entered his office because they had to secure a search warrant from a judge. So take a look at this video. This is the FBI at John Bolton's home.
And they're obviously still there, as you can see. They're zooming in from the camera view that we have right outside of the home. This was an investigation that was ordered by FBI Director Kash Patel, a Trump administration official, telling the Post, but asking to remain anonymous. Now, what's interesting is right before this took place, FBI Director Kash Patel posted this cryptic message on social media as he said, quote, "No one is above the law. FBI agents on a mission."
All right. So according to the New York Post, this is the details of what was behind this raid. The New York Post reports FBI agents raided the Maryland home and Washington, D.C. office of President Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton. During his first administration, Bolton was national security advisor. Friday morning in a high-profile probe of allegations that he, Bolton, sent, quote, highly sensitive classified documents to his family from a private email server while working in the White House. Federal investigators went to Bolton's home in Bethesda, Maryland at 7 a.m. in an investigation ordered by FBI Director Kash Patel, a Trump administration official told the Post. Agents later went to Bolton's office in downtown D.C., but did not enter until a judge signed a warrant for that location late Friday morning. No one is above the law, FBI agents on mission, Patel said in a cryptic post to X shortly after the raid began. We'll talk, by the way, about the left's response, their reaction to Kash Patel's post on X. The Post says Bolton has not been arrested and is not currently charged with any crimes, the administration official added. President Trump told reporters he's not a smart guy, but he could be a very unpatriotic guy. We're going to find out. Investigators reopened a dormant probe into Bolton's alleged use of a private email to send classified national security documents to his wife and daughter from his work desk before his dismissal by Trump in September of 2019, according to a senior U.S. government official. While Bolton was national security advisor, he was literally stealing classified information, utilizing his family as a cutout, this person charged. The probe was initially opened in 2020 and continued into the Biden administration, which froze the investigation. Friday's raid came at the behest of Patel, who reopened the matter after he took over the FBI in February, according to a senior U.S. official. Okay, so first let's talk about this post by Kash Patel. No one is above the law. The left is losing their minds over Kash Patel repeating a phrase that the left has claimed as their own over the past 5-6 years. Since President Trump has been subject to lawfare, the left is famous for saying no one's above the law, even the former president of the United States. Until, of course, it's Trump's FBI director, Kash Patel, saying no one is above the law at the same time that the FBI is raiding John Bolton's home. Andrew McCabe, you know Andrew McCabe, the former deputy FBI director under James Comey. Andrew McCabe, who was present at that secret Obama Situation Room meeting on December 9th of 2020 when Obama and his cronies manufactured that phony intelligence community assessment, absolutely inventing false allegations that Putin had tried to help Trump and favored Trump in the 2020 election. And that's why Trump defeated Hillary Clinton. Andrew McCabe was present. He was part of it. And he freaked out, maybe the loudest of all, on the mainstream media after Kash Patel's post. Take a look at this.
And I think it really degrades the Bureau and the department's image and legitimacy in the way that they are so blatantly trying to generate social media attention for themselves.
Okay, wait a second. The FBI's reputation. McCabe, he is so right. The FBI's reputation is of the utmost importance. In fact, if anybody is ever alleged to have lied under oath while an employee of the FBI or to leak information to the media for his own political purposes while working at the FBI or taking part in orchestrating the Russia hoax or signing off on phony FISA affidavits, weaponizing the FBI, that's a very serious, damaging behavior that really undercuts the FBI's reputation. Wait a second. That was Andrew McCabe, not Kash Patel. Those actions all came from Andrew McCabe. And we'll circle back to this a little bit later in the show, but I want you to notice right now, the people who are the angriest, who are being the most hyperbolic, President Trump's FBI is all about retribution. This is authoritarianism. This is just revenge. The people yelling the loudest are the people I described a moment ago. They're the ones, they're nervous. Their stomach is upset. They're drinking seltzer water and Tums all day today. All weekend, they probably didn't sleep because they were worried FBI agents would be outside of their door. Andrew McCabe is very afraid because President Trump said he didn't know anything about this raid. You know, President Trump enacting political revenge, the left says. Well, President Trump says, I could have known about it, but I didn't. Take a look.
They'll brief me probably today sometime.
And the foreign minister.
I tell Pam and I tell the group, I don't want to know, but just you have to do what you have to do. I don't want to know about it. It's not necessary. I could know about it. I could be the one starting it. I'm actually the chief law enforcement officer, but I feel that it's better this way.
He's not wrong. He has a right to know about it. Senator Patty Murray, she's the senator from Washington State. She reposted that clip of President Trump, and she says, I absolutely do not agree with Bolton's politics, but I can still say it's completely corrupt to send the FBI to raid the home of a political opponent or detractor. Everyone needs to be saying it. Trump is pushing us closer and closer towards authoritarianism. We all need to push back. But wait a second. Wait just a second. Hold on. Hold the phone. What are the allegations against John Bolton? What crimes is the FBI investigating whether or not John Bolton committed? Well, according to Jesse Waters at Fox News, he says his sources say that John Bolton was trafficking classified information, trafficking intelligence, not just here in the United States, but overseas. Take a look.
This might have nothing to do with classified documents or about classified intelligence that Bolton printed in his book. Trump Justice Insider Mike Davis says Democrats, rhinos, and reporters who think this raid on John Bolton is about his book will be very embarrassed when the search warrant becomes public. Primetime's hearing Bolton was making a lot of money from overseas and may have been trafficking in intelligence. That wouldn't be putting America first. Constitutional scholar Jonathan Turley, who we just heard from, says Bolton could be looking at up to 20 years in prison. So Bolton should take his own advice and take a big, beautiful, deep breath.
I think it's important that everybody take a deep breath here. This is a very serious matter.
That, of course, was John Bolton after the FBI raided President Trump's home at Mar-a-Lago. But here's the photographs that I want to show you. Photographs that, strangely enough, the mainstream media has no curiosity about, that flew under the radar until perhaps today, when we're going to bring attention to them. Because look at these photographs. This is a photograph. This first photograph is a photo of John Bolton in January of 2020. This is mere months after he was fired by President Trump. September, October, November, December. 4 months after he was fired by President Trump, he is in Qatar, walking by himself in Qatar, in Doha, Qatar. Well, that's a bit strange for a private citizen to be walking near the seat of government in Qatar. Look what's nearby. Continue scrolling down this thread, if you will, Spencer. If you look at the Google Street View, and this is according to a thread put together by Next News Network, the Google Street View shows that this location is on a road called Al Rayyan Road, Street 150, Zone 2. It's the exact same location. That's where John Bolton was walking. He wasn't just walking in Qatar. He wasn't just on some random street in the capital of Qatar. He was, and you can scroll to the next photo in this thread, the red box shows exactly where Bolton was caught on camera walking on Al Rayyan Road. You can see the exact location. Scroll down to the next one. He was walking in the red box, but look up in the top right corner, in that green box. That green box is the palace in Qatar, the Fahad bin Ali Palace, the seat of government in Qatar, where Qatar's political elite meet. Why would a private citizen who 4 months prior had been the national security advisor for the Trump administration be walking along this road without anyone with him? near the seat of government of a foreign country who allegedly traffics in just the kind of classified information that Bolton allegedly emailed to his wife and daughter from his desk at the White House. So now think about what we saw on Friday morning. When the FBI raided John Bolton's home and later John Bolton's office, the left's knee-jerk reaction was to care about the reputation of the FBI, was to accuse President Trump with their favorite ad hominem. He's a dictator. He's an authoritarian. He weaponized government. Classified information they ignore. It's funny, isn't it? That suddenly the mainstream media, which told us at the time that the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago how serious of a crime it is for the former president of the United States in an office secured by the Secret Service to have any kind of classified information, which he has a right to, having been the president of the United States. We're now told by the left that weaponizing the federal government is a problem when they have literally spent the last decade weaponizing the Department of Justice, the intel community, and the FBI against President Trump. We're warned about political warfare, and the mainstream media, this might be the funniest of all, is defending John Bolton, warmonger John Bolton, who never met a military conflict that he didn't like, whose loyalty lies to the next war he wants to start, more so than even the country to which he belongs. But let's journey back for a second. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. After that raid of Mar-a-Lago, when the FBI rifled through Melania's underwear drawer and through Barron Trump's bedroom, violating the privacy of the former first family, not just as a way of humiliating Trump, but quite obviously looking for those very Russiagate documents that Tulsi Gabbard revealed publicly just weeks ago. John Bolton's reaction to this unprecedented, inappropriate, obviously tyrannical raid on Mar-a-Lago was to tell everyone to calm down, to take a deep breath. Take a look.
And I think it's important that everybody take a deep breath here. This is a very serious matter, and it would be better if we could let the legal process play out. I know that may be frustrating to some people, but the seriousness of it itself dictates that we try and proceed in the most orderly way we can.
Well, the seriousness of the allegations here against John Bolton requires us to proceed in the most prudent manner, to let the process play out. So, Mr. Bolton, if you're listening, just take a deep breath here. And it's important that everyone do the same, everyone freaking out, and let the process play out. Because as John Bolton reminded us after the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, no one is above the law. Take a look.
Any given moment. But I don't think he cared about the classification system. I don't think he appreciated the sensitivity of this information, and he didn't appreciate the sensitivity of how it was often acquired, the so-called sources and methods. So this had been briefed to him before I arrived. It was repeated frequently. I think it simply had no impact on him whatever.
There's a couple of different ways that people think about this, and people who are not friendly to the president who think about what's happened here. And one of them is, Donald Trump, master thief, criminal, running some kind of elaborate conspiracy to bring things out of the White House and keep them secret, for potentially for political or financial gain. There are other people who his attitude is Trump is chaotic, he's careless, he's not that smart. He took these things almost by mistake, and now he's basically stamping his feet and saying they're mine. I don't want to give them up. Give me a sense of where you think the truth lies with respect to Trump's intelligence, carelessness, and the degree to which he might have brought motive to bear on taking these documents out of the White House and keeping them for this long at Mar-a-Lago.
Well, it's very hard to speculate on motive other than that he liked cool things. He saw things so he wanted to take them, and he was pretty much able to take them, and not just on classified information matters, on all kinds of things that crossed his desk. Some days he liked to eat a lot of French fries. Some days he took classified documents. He wanted them. Why did he want them? Because he could get them.
Every single word out of John Bolton's mouth applies to him today. If that's not poetic justice, then I don't know what is. Here's the thing, though. The material point of all of this. This FBI raid of John Bolton's home is truly the first based act by President Trump's Department of Justice. This is bigger than Tulsi Gabbard's revelations about Russiagate. Why? Because this is the first paradigm shifting accountability that you and I voted for. That's why if I'm in the uniparty in the swamp today, I am quaking in my boots. I am sweating uncontrollably. It's pretty easy to get away with vicious crimes when no one ever arrests you for it, when you feel confident that you're not going to face any justice. But today, do you think swamp creatures in DC are confident today that they won't face accountability? Listen, the Trump Department of Justice so far is fine, except Epstein. They get from me an adequate, a passing grade, except Epstein. Getting boys out of girls' sports, cool, great. Getting rid of DEI, absolutely thumbs up. But in a sense, those are so obvious, it's almost ridiculous that we celebrate it. But now, are we finally using our just power in government to actually hold accountable, not just verbally, but hold accountable under the law, swamp creatures who hate us and who abuse us? That's not just based. That's paradigm shifting. And the reason why it's paradigm shifting is because it's justice. It's not revenge. It's not retribution. It's not the weaponization of the government. It's justice. But also because it's the only way to defeat the left, to defeat the swamp, to defeat the uniparty. Get them. If they committed a crime, get them. Not just with your words on cable news, get them with the law. Because they won't stop until you do that. And up until now, up until Friday morning, up until this raid of John Bolton's home, nobody has ever done that. Not even Republicans. That's actually why the left is freaking out. That's actually why Andrew McCabe is worried about the FBI's reputation. Not really. Because the Trump administration is right over the target, but also because they're using the one tactic that will be effective in stopping the left, which is why the left so passionately fears it. And by the way, to all of the leftists and swamp creatures and uniparty thugs who are worried about lawfare, let me just show you a photograph on the screen right now. This is a photograph of the President of the United States taken in prison. This is President Trump's mugshot. You're worried about lawfare. Are you worried about lawfare, you commies? Well, cry me a river. Because the number of Trump administration officials that have been arrested, not because they committed crimes, but because the Biden administration weaponized the FBI against us because we had the audacity to vote for this man. They put the president behind bars. They took a mugshot of him. Now, I doubt they anticipated that it would become the most iconic mugshot of all time, a rallying cry for us, President Trump's base, a tangible piece of evidence that we can practically taste the weaponization of the government. And we know that President Trump stands between those swamp creatures and us. They're trying to get him so that they can get to us. So don't give me any BS about worrying about lawfare. This is the best thing that's come out of Trump's Department of Justice, not just this administration, but in this administration and the last. And by the way, because the internet is hilarious, even in the face of serious events, on a lighter, funnier note, the New York Post's headline, can we bring this up on the screen, Spencer? The New York Post's headline about the raid of John Bolton's home says, FBI raids Bolton's stash. The best pun writers in the country work for the New York Post. Because, of course, John Bolton is known for his mustache and his stash of classified information. Ha ha ha. Hilarious. But what's even funnier is the guys, the memers on the internet, made an AI video of John Bolton playing on this pun about, his mustache and his stash of classified information. And I just couldn't resist showing you this video. Take a look. This is AI.
We seem to have breaking news. Apparently, the FBI has found the USB thumb drive they were looking for. Mr. Bolton was reportedly hiding it under his mustache. This is the same technique he used to smuggle information in and out of the State Department. Apparently, it was President Trump who alerted the FBI to make sure they checked under his mustache. He said, and I quote, "Make sure you look under that son of a bitch's mustache. I never trusted that mustache." We seem to have breaking news.
Man.
Apparently, the
First of all, how realistic is that AI? It sounds exactly like Bret Baer's voice, and John Bolton looks exactly like himself. And can't you just picture the guy crying because he's caught with the flash drive under his mustache? The Ghislaine Maxwell transcripts have been released. The Department of Justice, the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell over the course of a couple of days, and the DOJ finally released those transcripts. We on the Liz Wheeler Show scrubbed through them, and we have a few big takeaways from those transcripts coming up in just a moment. One of our sponsors for today's show is Crowd Health. What if you could get healthcare for under $100? Now, you've heard me talk often about Crowd Health because my husband and I quit our health insurance and signed our family up for Crowd Health instead. And I want to tell you about something new that Crowd Health has just introduced. You can finally rid yourself of the bureaucracy of the healthcare system and take agency over your own health, but also have confidence that if something happens, it's okay. There are people there to help you with the bills. Crowd Health just introduced what they're calling the Black Swan membership. It's the healthcare alternative for people who want autonomy over their care, their costs, and their lifestyle. They just need a little help with the Black Swan events that do happen in our lives. For just $95 a month, you get access to a team of health bill negotiators, low-cost prescription and lab testing tools, and a database of low-cost, high-quality doctors vetted by Crowd Health. You stay in control without insurance and their networks dictating your care. And what if something major does happen to you or a member of your family? Well, you pay the first $15,000, and then the crowd, that's me and my family and others, stepped in to help fund the rest. It feels like the options that we used to have before Obamacare messed everything up. And if you use code Liz, it's only $80 for the first 3 months. So visit joincrowdhealth.com and use promo code Liz. That's joincrowdhealth.com, promo code Liz. The mandatory disclaimer is Crowd Health is not insurance. I personally like to call it assurance. Opt out. Take your power back. This is how we win. Joincrowdhealth.com, promo code Liz. Okay, the Department of Justice released the entirety of the Ghislaine Maxwell transcripts. That would be the conversations between Pam Bondi's Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, and Ghislaine Maxwell, who's been convicted of trafficking underage girls to Jeffrey Epstein. She's serving decades in federal prison as a result of that conviction. After our outcry, the Department of Justice sat down with Ghislaine Maxwell. Kind of unbelievable that they hadn't done that before, that no Department of Justice had ever asked Ghislaine Maxwell about Jeffrey Epstein specifically. Mind-blowing, actually. So kudos to the Department of Justice for doing this, but also I find it a little hard to praise people for just doing the bare minimum what they're expected to do. Good job, Department of Justice. But there are some takeaways from these transcripts. First of all, it's important to understand that Ghislaine Maxwell is not a good person. She's a criminal, and she's the worst kind of criminal. She trafficked underage girls to a pedophile, and she's serving time in prison for it, which she should be. But the lens through which we should all be looking at everything that comes out of Ghislaine Maxwell's mouth is through the lens of understanding that she's not only a criminal, but she's not an honest person. You don't commit that kind of crime by accident. You don't commit that kind of crime just by association. She was actively taking part in Epstein's sex crimes against children. That being said, almost everything that she says, I take with a grain of salt because of that. She's also, by the way, not just taking part in this interview because she wants to help. No, she's sucking up to President Trump because she wants a pardon. She doesn't want to spend the rest of her life in federal prison, even if it's a cushy prison in Texas, even if she gets to have a prison BFF like Elizabeth Holmes, who was convicted for her Theranos fraud. No, Ghislaine Maxwell is a criminal who's been convicted of sex trafficking underage girls to Jeffrey Epstein. She's not honest. She's sucking up to Trump for a pardon. And to be honest, the more I read of these transcripts, the back and forth between Maxwell and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, it didn't answer my questions. It raised more questions. So let's walk through a little bit of what we learned from these transcripts. First of all, Ghislaine Maxwell does not think that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. So on that, I suppose she agrees with the majority of the American people. This is the exchange between Todd Blanche and Ghislaine Maxwell. Blanche says, so, what I do want to be careful about is, asking you to speculate, because anybody can do that. And I don't think that's fair to you or anybody else to ask you to give us kind of your opinion. But do you think that the third point you say, which is kind of a failure by the BOP, that's the Bureau of Prisons, there's an OIG, Office of the Inspector General report. There's SDNY investigation about that. So you think he did not die by suicide, given all the things we just talked about? And by the way, just to prepare you, this is how Todd Blanche talks. So if you're looking for very succinct, cut and dry questions, you're not going to find them in this conversation. Ghislaine Maxwell responded very succinctly and says, I quote, "I do not believe he died by suicide. No." Todd Blanche says, and do you have any speculation or view of who killed him? Ghislaine Maxwell says, no, I don't. Todd Blanche says, and I ask that because if you don't believe that there's any truth to the allegations of blackmail, or that he had kind of a list, or that he had reasons to have people hate him, why would someone kill him in prison? Ghislaine Maxwell responds by saying, in prison where I am, they will kill you, or they will pay. Somebody can pay a prisoner to kill you for $25 worth of commissary. That's about the going rate for a hit. Todd Blanche says, so that goes to the third reason, which is kind of the mismanagement. Ghislaine Maxwell says, yes. Todd Blanche says, or the shortfallings or shortcomings of the Bureau of Prisons. I'm going to pause right there and say, does it feel like he's leading her to her answers? Because it feels to me like these are not open-ended questions, that these are him planting ideas. Ghislaine Maxwell says, yes. And Todd Blanche says, well, which is a little different than from my question which is, do you think that there was somebody on the outside of prison? So putting aside what could happen on the inside, on the outside of prison, who wanted him dead so badly that he would have, or she would have, caused him to be killed on the inside? Ghislaine Maxwell says, I don't see that. I think, is it possible? Of course it's possible. But I don't know of any reason why, and I don't believe in the blackmail or in any of this. I don't think Epstein had a hit on like that. If it is indeed murder, I believe it was an internal situation. Todd Blanche says, yeah, so you don't have any reason, firsthand knowledge, or even speculation, it sounds like, to think that he was killed to kind of silence him or keep him from going public about people he knew about. Ghislaine Maxwell says, I don't know, because I think that that is just part of the story that's been created that started back in 2008, 2009. Todd Blanche says, okay, yeah, I mean, that's the point. Like, I don't think there's value in talking, there's a lot of information about what happened, at the MCC, and what is important to me is whether, this is how Todd Blanche, word for word, is speaking, is the idea that he didn't die by suicide. That's one thing. But if, to the extent that folks believe he was murdered to keep him quiet, or believe he had information on rich and powerful people, do you have any reason to believe that that's true? Ghislaine Maxwell says, I do not have any reason to believe that. And I also think it's ludicrous, because I also happen to think that is what they wanted, they would have had plenty of opportunity when he wasn't in jail. And if they were worried about blackmail or anything from him, he would have been a very easy target. Okay. So what is the takeaway from this conversation? The takeaway from this portion of the conversation is Todd Blanche is leading Ghislaine Maxwell to the conclusion. I don't know what Todd Blanche believes. I don't know Todd Blanche personally, but he's clearly forming the conversation to get her to agree with him, not asking open-ended questions. I don't know why he would talk like that. That's not what I would do if I were sitting across from Ghislaine Maxwell. That's certainly not the way that I would speak. I would be clearer in my questions. I would form my questions as proper sentences. I would ask open-ended questions and then follow-ups. I wouldn't say, this is what I believe. Do you agree? That's not going to beget any useful information. So Ghislaine Maxwell doesn't think Epstein killed himself. She also says she doesn't think that it was some gigantic hit. She thinks it was something from the inside. Okay, well, she doesn't know. Again, she's a criminal. She's in prison. Make of that what you will. Ghislaine Maxwell also says in these transcripts that she doesn't think that there is an Epstein client list. She says that she also believes there's no blackmail. Listen, it's those portions of the interview that I take with a grain of salt, because I assume she has some kind of agreement with the Department of Justice against implicating herself if she were to do that. But I still don't think that without the promise of release, of pardon, of clemency at the very least, that she would implicate herself. So if there were a client list, then she would have been part of supplying those underage girls to those clients. If there was blackmail, she would have been aware of that. Of course, she's going to deny it because there would be some way of getting her that the Department of Justice couldn't protect her against if she were to admit that. So I take that with a grain of salt. I don't care about her opinions on those matters. Todd Blanche then asked her whether she had any knowledge of Epstein being paid by Israel's intelligence apparatus, the Mossad. This is what Todd Blanche said. So I'm going to ask you questions that you shouldn't read into them. I just want to know whether they resonate with you. Have you ever had any contact with any representative that you know of from Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency? Ghislaine Maxwell responds and says, can you ask me that again? Todd Blanche says, have you ever had any contact with an individual that you understand to be from Mossad, an Israeli intelligence agency? Ghislaine Maxwell says, well, not deliberately. Todd Blanche says, pardon me? Ghislaine Maxwell says, not deliberately. Todd Blanche says, okay, and did you know? We asked this, we talked about this a bit earlier, but just to put a finer point on it, did you ever know that were you ever told, did you ever think that Mr. Epstein was getting any money from any intelligence agency, including Mossad? Ghislaine Maxwell says, well, I don't believe so, but I wouldn't know. I mean, I would be very surprised if he did. I don't think so. No. Todd Blanche says, we've talked about a lot of names, and I'm sure there's some that we haven't covered. Are there any foreign nationals? So right now we've talked about some British, the royal family a little bit, maybe high society folks in Britain. Were there any international businessmen or politicians that had a very close relationship with Mr. Epstein that we haven't talked about? We haven't already talked about. Ghislaine Maxwell says, off the top of my head, I can think of Ehud Barak. Todd Blanche says, you said that Mr. Epstein at some point in the mid to late 1990s, he started taking testosterone. Did you ever know him to take any other drugs? Ghislaine Maxwell says, no. I mean, he took pills for his heart, I think, but I don't know no substances. Todd Blanche says, what do you know about his heart condition? Okay, pause the transcript there. First of all, Ehud Barak is the former prime minister of Israel. So Ghislaine Maxwell volunteers of her own volition that Jeffrey Epstein had a very close relationship with the former prime minister of Israel, and Todd Blanche didn't ask any follow-up questions? What? This entire portion of the transcript is like whiplash-inducing subject change. There's not a single question. Oh, what kind of relationship? Did they do business together? Did they do intelligence together? Were they personal friends? Can you detail why you just stated of your own volition that Jeffrey Epstein had a close relationship with the former prime minister of Israel? But nothing? Todd Blanche asks nothing? Listen, I'm not going to speculate about why that is. I don't know why Todd Blanche would not ask a question. It does beget more questions than it answers, though. Was he instructed not to ask anything further if the topic of Israel is brought up? Is he just bad at asking questions? Because that's pretty elementary to follow up on such volunteered information. This seems, and I mean, go a little bit further back in the transcript too, when he says, have you ever had any contact with an individual that you understood to be from Mossad, an Israeli intelligence agency? Ghislaine Maxwell says, not deliberately. And then his follow-up question was, did Epstein get any money from Mossad? Wait a second. Why wouldn't you ask, what do you mean when you say not deliberately? Do you mean that you did have contact with agents of the Mossad, but they just instigated that contact? What kind of relationships? Who were these people? What did they want from Epstein? What did Epstein do or not do with them? How are there not detailed questions when Ghislaine Maxwell actually does produce some interesting answers? But Todd Blanche's follow-up question narrows it to this, did he get any money from the Mossad? To my understanding, there's never been any allegations that Epstein got money from the Mossad. My understanding of the allegations of Epstein, quote unquote, belonging to intelligence is that he was an off-the-books associate of some intelligence agencies, the US, maybe Britain, maybe France, maybe Saudi Arabia, maybe Israel. We don't know. but that he wasn't paid directly as an employee or as a source of any of these intel agencies, that he was used, again, off the books to broker deals the governments didn't want to look like they were associated with. And so, no, he wouldn't have gotten money directly from the Mossad. No one's saying that he did, except, I guess, Todd Blanche. Okay, Ghislaine Maxwell also confirmed that her father, Robert Maxwell, was an intel agent, that he was Israeli intel. Pardon me, that he was Israeli intel. She then said that Epstein never met her father, which, again, it really wasn't that specific. So what do you mean when you say he hadn't met? Did you mean that Epstein never met your father in person? Did he ever communicate with your father? Did he send text messages, emails? Did he FaceTime? Did he talk on the phone? Did he get coffee in person? What does that mean when you say you hadn't met, or Epstein hadn't met her father? I don't know what that means. Again, Todd Blanche didn't ask a follow-up question that clarifies at all. So really this interaction just begets more questions. It doesn't answer our questions. Todd Blanche asked Ghislaine Maxwell whether Epstein had any contacts with the FBI. But again, the way that this question is phrased is so narrow that it doesn't answer any questions. Todd Blanche says, so did you ever know Mr. Epstein to communicate with FBI agents, either like intelligence FBI agents, like as a source, or just generally with FBI agents? Ghislaine Maxwell says, no. Okay, but the question was, as a source. Well, again, the allegations against Epstein aren't really that he was a source so much as an off-the-books liaison. Todd Blanche then says, do you think if he had done that, you would have known? Like he would have told you something like that? Like if I said to you, Mr. Epstein was a source for the FBI, would you say that's crazy? No, he wasn't. Or maybe he was. He wouldn't have told me that anyway. Again, he's planting ideas in her mind of different ways that she can answer this. Ghislaine Maxwell says, I have two answers for that. I think if he was for real, I think he would have bragged about it to me as a show off, because he could be a show off. And if he wasn't, he might have dropped it like he was cool. And I don't remember him doing either. Again, the question was so narrow. In fact, it reminded me when I first began working in this industry back when I was on cable news a decade ago. One of the pieces of advice I got for how to conduct an interview it was actually someone who wasn't a show host. It was someone who was a writer, but who had interviewed a lot of people. He said to me, when you're interviewing guests, don't ask a question and provide the binary options of these are the only two things that you can say, unless it's a situation where you just want someone to repeat, like, yes, this is my position. But if you are fishing for information, ask the question and refrain from giving option A and option B as the only two binary choices that you can ask. And yet this is what Todd Blanche is doing, is he's providing, here are the different options. Here's the multiple choice answers that you can pick from. Instead of just asking her about associations, he then gives her options of the different types of associations there might be. It begets more questions than it answers. He asked her in general about ties to intel agencies by saying this. Todd Blanche says, and what about any other intel agencies like the CIA or Defense Intelligence or any other law enforcement agency? Ghislaine Maxwell said, okay, I don't think so. I don't remember anything like that. I just don't think he had the wherewithal. And I think that whole aspect of that is, can I use a bad word? She asks. Her attorney says yes. Todd Blanche says yes. And Ghislaine Maxwell says bullshit. Well, again, she's looking for a pardon from President Trump. So maybe take that with a grain of salt. Maybe one of the most interesting things that we learned from this interview is confirmation that Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein helped start the Clinton Foundation. Ghislaine Maxwell said, I went on a trip with the president to South America. Todd Blanche says, with which president? Ghislaine says, oh, sorry, President Clinton. Todd Blanche says, yeah, okay, just you know. Ghislaine says, sorry. Todd Blanche says, I just wanted to make sure it was clear. Okay, so you went on a trip to where? Ghislaine says, Latin America. Blanche says, and who? And so Ms. Mills was on that trip? Ghislaine Maxwell says, she was. Todd Blanche says, and President Clinton was on that trip. Ghislaine says, he was. Todd Blanche says, who else was on that trip? Ghislaine says, Doug Band. Todd Blanche says, who worked with President Clinton? Ghislaine says, yes. Todd Blanche says, and was Mr. Epstein? Ghislaine says, no. Todd Blanche says, and what was the purpose of that trip? Ghislaine Maxwell says, well, the president had, I don't know. I mean, the president met with, I can't even remember I know presidents, and we were Todd Blanche says, was this part of President Clinton's work after he left office with his foundation, or was meaning what? Ghislaine says, I don't think the foundation, Todd Blanche says, was it something for him, or was it? Ghislaine then says, I don't remember when the Clinton Global Initiative started. So if you give me the date, I can tell you if that was pre or post, because without that, I can't pin the reason. David Marcus says, do you remember what it was for or not? Ghislaine Maxwell says, no, I don't recall. But in that interaction, she reveals again something that's been largely reported, but up until now, not necessarily confirmed, that Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were a large part of the beginning of the Clinton Global Initiative. So they had a much closer relationship to Bill Clinton than the mainstream media wants you to remember. Here's the thing. These transcripts raise more questions than they answer, predominantly because of two reasons. Because Ghislaine Maxwell is a convicted criminal, convicted of sex trafficking. She's not an honest person. She's not a good person. She has an ulterior motive here, which is pretty obvious. She wants a pardon from the president. So she spent a lot of time sucking up to the president. She, said that he wasn't involved in anything, which I think we all largely agree. We would know if President Trump was involved in anything shady related to Epstein. That would have come out years ago. He's not. He kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago when he found out that Epstein was poaching young girls from his spa. And he's advocated for the victims of Epstein for a long time. We all know that President Trump knew him, but wasn't associated with his crimes. Ghislaine emphasized that because she wants a pardon. She wants clemency. But the other thing that I think sticks out about these transcripts is that the questions were not constructed in a way that's going to beget any kind of useful leads. That being said, there is a way. You could even argue that it's an easier way, a quicker way, a more effective way of getting to the bottom of the question that underpins the entire Epstein scandal. And the question that underpins the entire Epstein scandal is, why was Epstein let off easy in 2007 for allegations that he committed sex crimes against underage girls? And we have a partial answer to that given by Alex Acosta, the former U.S. attorney, the one who cut that sweetheart deal. He said during a 2020 interview with the Department of Justice, OPR, Office of Professional Responsibility, it was an investigation into why that deal was cut. Alex Acosta said, I was told to back off because Epstein belonged to intelligence. So in a nutshell, the allegation against Jeffrey Epstein was that he committed sex crimes against underage girls. That's why he was in prison. But that he was let off easy in 2007 because he belonged to intelligence. So the question is, what does that mean? What work did he do for or with intelligence agencies, and which intelligence agencies? Ours? And if so, which ones? Foreign intel agencies? And if so, which ones? And what deals was he involved in? And the easiest way to get to the bottom of this question, which will then answer, it'll have a cascading effect, it'll answer almost all of the rest of the questions, is to release the transcript of that Alex Acosta interview with Department of Justice OPR. We need to know exactly what Alex Acosta was asked and exactly what he answered. We need to know the context of everything else that he was asked and every other answer he gave and what questions he wasn't asked. We need actually to hear from Alex Acosta himself. But in the meantime, before that's possible, and I'm not sure why it's not possible, I'm not sure why he's not speaking out against this, Attorney General Pam Bondi has the authority to release that Alex Acosta transcript. So sure, it's great the Department of Justice finally interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell. It's about time that happened. Her answers begot more questions than they answered. But we could get to the bottom of this so much quicker if Pam Bondi would release that transcript of Alex Acosta. Raise your voices. You're so powerful when you take part in this administration. When you hold accountable individuals who are an impediment to the America First agenda that President Trump espouses and that we share with him. We voted for President Trump for the justice that we saw on Friday morning when President Trump's FBI, under the helm of FBI Director Kash Patel, raided the home of John Bolton, who abused his position in the first Trump administration, allegedly sent himself highly sensitive classified information outside of the White House, and then allegedly trafficked that intelligence, possibly in foreign nations, and possibly profiting from that trafficking. That's the justice we voted for. And when there's an individual, an employee in the Trump administration, and there's a lot of people in the Trump administration, so there's bound to be some bad apples, there's bound to be some infiltrators, there's bound to be some people that just aren't competent. When there is somebody who becomes an impediment to the justice that President Trump promised us when we cast our votes for him, we need to call that person out. We need to bring that to President Trump's attention because we want President Trump's administration to be the sharpest that it can be. Attorney General Pam Bondi has failed multiple times on the rollout of the Epstein files, on procuring justice for the allegations that the reason Epstein was let off easy was because deep state swamp creatures wanted to cover his ties to intelligence. But she has an opportunity now to somewhat make that right. She has the opportunity to show us that she actually does care about justice. And she can do so that quickly by releasing this transcript of Alex Acosta talking to the Department of Justice OPR in 2020. So raise your voice and ask her, why have you not done this? And demand that she do it now in the interest of justice. Now listen, in a world that has gone fully digital, for better or for worse, you can make an argument both ways, holding something real in your hands feels almost revolutionary. And that's what Frontier magazine is. It's a piece of history that you can touch. It's a tangible, lasting record of truth in a time when truth is too easily erased or manipulated. And now Frontier magazine by Blaze Media is back with issue number 3, our boldest, most unapologetic edition yet. You know what? I have it right here next to me. Hold on. I just received this in the mail. Let's open it up. Let's take a look at this. Tangible. This is not something that you're doom scrolling on your phone. This is something, if I'm competent enough to open this. Look at this. Look at this. How beautiful is this? You should feel this. This is not cheap magazine material. This is something you keep on a shelf. Look at this photography. Look at this reporting. Look at this. Issue number 3 is our boldest, most unapologetic edition yet. And when you own Frontier, you own something that can't be buried in an algorithm. You can pass it to a friend. You can keep it on your shelf. You can hand it to your kids or your grandkids one day and say, this is what was really happening. Ignore those revisionist history books that you're finding in your public schools. This is how it actually went down. And the only way to get this in your hands is through Blaze Unlimited. Blaze Unlimited is more than just your ticket to Frontier. You get early access to exclusive events, VIP treatment, members-only content, and a premium experience built for people who want to take their membership deeper. This isn't just about reading the truth. It's about owning it. Go to blazeunlimited.com/Liz right now and lock in your subscription before we sell out again. The first 50 subscribers who use the code BLAZE50 will get $40 off and receive a special bonus, digital access to Frontier issues 1 and 2, so that you can complete the story from the start. That's blazeunlimited.com/Liz, promo code BLAZE50. Here it is. Blaze Frontier. Issue number 3, summer 2025. You got to have this. Go to blazeunlimited.com/Liz, promo code Liz50. All right. Tomorrow on the show, President Trump reportedly to send troops to Chicago. And Chicago white women are freaking out about it. Do not miss this story tomorrow on The Liz Wheeler Show. Subscribe on Spotify. Search The Liz Wheeler Show. Hit that subscribe button. YouTube.com/Liz Wheeler. Hit subscribe. Hit that bell. So you are notified when we go live, when we post a new episode, when there's content that you need to see. And x.com/Liz_Wheeler. Make sure you're following over there as well. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.